When they punish you with silence, there are wounds that bleed silently, wounds that no one sees because the weapon that inflicted them leaves no visible mark. I am talking about the sting of silence. It cuts deeper than any shout, sharper than any accusation, because it does not just reject your words, it rejects you. Have you felt it? That chilling emptiness when a friend suddenly stops calling, a partner pulls away, a mentor disappears, or a community that once welcomed you suddenly turns its back, leaving you in an empty space of unspoken judgment. You try to speak, but your words meet an invisible wall. You reach out, but your hand grasps only air. It feels like being left alone, a spiritual exile that drains the color from your world and threatens to choke your very spirit. It feels like the greatest fear, being forgotten, unloved, unheard. But what if this terrifying silence is not an empty space at all? What if it is an invitation? What if, when human voices fade, God's voice prepares to speak? For even when your father and your mother leave you, the Lord will take you up. Psalm 27, verse 10. This aloneness is not a punishment. It is a holy space God is clearing for His unmistakable promise. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Listen closely, for this is not a time of punishment, but a planned change from God. When the quiet comes, when support disappears, when the voices that once cheered or guided you go silent, God is not absent. He is at work. He is taking apart what you depend on, that is not Him, and helping you hear better. This time of quiet is like a design for something deep inside you. It is a period of cleansing, sorting out what will not last, and showing what is eternal. It is a powerful preparation, not for more noise, but for clear sight and a voice of power that can only be made strong in times of being alone. God is using the stopping of human approval to intensify your hunger for His presence. He is closing doors not to exclude you, but to send you onto a less traveled path, a path where only His guidance is your compass. This is where your roots grow deep, where your trust becomes solid, where your true calling is whispered from the heart of the Father to the deepest part of your spirit. This silent treatment from the world is, in fact, a special invitation from God Himself to a deeper closeness and more powerful strength. One important truth is that silence is the place where your true calling is made strong. The very absence of human approval often helps God shape your authentic, God-given calling, making it stronger than ever. The Bible reminds us, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth." Psalm 46, verse 10. Also, think of it as pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces patience. Let patience finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. James chapter 1, verses 2 to 4. When the world grows quiet around you, it is not a sign that your purpose has vanished. Instead, it is often a sign from God that your purpose is changing in a big way. This silence removes the surface layers of ambition driven by outside praise, or what society expects. It forces you to face the core of what you believe. Am I doing this for recognition, or am I doing this because God called me? The test of silence burns away the unwanted parts of relying on yourself and the need for outside approval, leaving behind the pure gold of a calling rooted only in God's clear task. It demands that you listen not to the changing ideas of what people think, but to the steady inner guide of the Holy Spirit. This process builds a strong foundation, making sure that when your time of public work arrives, you stand on the firm ground of God's blessing, not easily affected by people's changing opinions. There is a powerful example in the Bible with David in the wilderness. Before he was King David, a mighty warrior and beloved psalmist, he was David running away, chased by Saul, living in caves, hiding in the wilderness, misunderstood, often alone or with a small group of outcasts. For years, the silence from the throne, the silence of popular praise, the silence of his own family who doubted him was very loud. But in that aloneness, he became a man after God's own heart. He wrote songs, learned to lead, and grew closer to God, not because a kingdom was waiting, but because God was his only comfort. His true calling as a shepherd king was made strong in the quiet aloneness, not in the crowded palace. Another example is Joseph in prison. Thrown into a pit by his brothers, sold into slavery, then wrongly put in prison for a crime he did not commit, Joseph felt deep silence and abandonment. The years in Pharaoh's dungeon were years of complete aloneness from his family, his dreams, and any sense of fairness. Yet, it was in that silent, forgotten place that God was shaping him. He learned patience, how to manage, and strong faith. The silence of the prison walls was God's preparation for the loudest and most important voice in Egypt, second only to Pharaoh. You see this clearly today when a visionary leader feels called to build a faith-based charity. They share their idea with friends, family, and possible helpers, only to be met with polite doubt, closed doors, and, eventually, a very loud quiet. People stop returning calls, support lessons, doubts begin. Yet, in that aloneness, this leader it is forced to go back to the beginning, to prayer, to God alone. It is there, in the quiet, that the true plan appears. The mission becomes clearer, and the dependence on God deepens, making the eventual launch not just a good idea, but a movement started by God. A second truth reveals that God speaks loudest when human voices fade. Your time of quiet is often God's way of making it easier for you to hear His clear voice. We see this in the book of 1 Kings chapter 19, verses 11 and 12. The Lord said, "Go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by." Then a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord, but the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper, also, "Though my father and mother leave me, the Lord will receive me." Psalm 27, verse 10. We live in a world full of noise, opinions, advice, criticisms, endless talk. It is hard to hear God's message among the constant noise of human voices. God, in His endless wisdom and love, sometimes creates a time of silence around us. He allows human voices to fade, the noise of earthly worries to quiet, so that His whisper can come through. This is not being left alone. It is a special meeting with God. It is an invitation into the holy quiet of Horeb, where, like Elijah, we discover that God's power is not always in the storm or the earthquake, but in the deep, gentle whisper that reaches deep into our spirit. This quiet time trains your spiritual hearing, teaching you to tell the difference between the noise of the world and the clear, powerful instruction of God. It is a school of understanding, where you learn to lean only on His advice, knowing that His voice is enough, even when all others are silent. One story that captures this is Elijah at Mount Horeb. After his great win against the prophets of Baal, Elijah ran from Jezebel's anger, falling under a broom tree in deep despair. He felt alone, abandoned, sure he was the only prophet left. God did not shout at him. He did not send an army. He led Elijah to Horeb, where the prophet saw wind, earthquake, and fire, all powerful displays, yet God was not in them. Finally, a gentle whisper. In his deepest aloneness and despair, God's voice came not as a roar, but as a kind, clear instruction, reminding Elijah he was not alone and still had a mission. The quiet around him created the holy space for God's unique message. Another example is John the Baptist in the wilderness. From childhood, John lived in the wilderness, away from the busy cities, the meeting places, the political fights. His was a life of deep aloneness. This was not punishment, it was preparation. In the silence of the desert, he was not sidetracked by popular religious ideas or cultural ways. He heard God's voice with amazing clarity, becoming the clear voice crying in the wilderness, getting the way ready for the Lord. His message was pure, honest, because his life was not polluted by the noise of the world. You see this clearly today when a person is struggling with a big life decision, changing jobs, setting a difficult boundary in a relationship, moving. They ask for advice from friends, family, trusted mentors, but receive confusing advice, or worse, no clear guidance. Some might even offer a quiet criticism, hinting at disapproval. Feeling lost, they turn inward to prayer and thought. In that chosen quiet, away from outside pressure, a sense of peace comes, and a clear, almost certain belief begins to form. It is not a loud voice, but a deep knowing, a gentle assurance that guides their next step, confirming that God's advice is better than all human wisdom. A third insight is that aloneness helps create strong dependence and deeper roots. When God lets you feel alone, He is cutting away your reliance on human help, so you will depend only on Him, and your faith will grow stronger. Jesus said, "I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me, and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing." John chapter 15, verse 5. We also read, "Yes, my soul, find rest in God. My hope comes from Him. Truly, He is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will not be shaken. My salvation and my honor depend on God. He is my mighty rock, my refuge. Trust in Him at all times, you people. Pour out your hearts to Him, for God is our refuge." Psalm 62, verses 5 to 8. We are made for community, but sometimes our reliance on that community can quietly take the place of our main dependence on God. When human hands pull back, when the usual sources of comfort, approval, or provision go quiet, it shows us the true anchors of our soul. This time of aloneness is not about being left alone. It is about getting things in order. God is inviting you to a place where He alone is enough for you, your rock, your safe place. It is like a spiritual cleansing from the quiet worship of human approval or help. In this quiet dependence, your spiritual roots go deeper than ever before, reaching into hidden springs of life-giving water that keep you going no matter what happens on the surface. This foundational work makes sure that when the storms of life surely come, you will stand strong, because your life is hidden with Christ in God, drawing strength from an eternal, unchanging source. One powerful example from the Bible is Paul in Arabia. After his sudden change on the Damascus road, Paul did not immediately start public ministry. Instead, he spent 3 years in Arabia. Galatians chapter 1, verses 16 to 17. This was a time of quiet and being alone with God. He was not being taught by the apostles. He was being taught directly by Christ. In that wilderness, away from human influence and outside approval, his dependence on God alone was made strong, and his understanding of God's Word became solid. This quiet time prepared him for a ministry that would eventually reach across many lands, built on a strong foundation. Another example is Mary, the mother of Jesus. After the miraculous birth, the visit of the shepherds, and the wonder of the wise men, Mary did not tell everyone the full scope of God's plan. Luke chapter 2, verse 19 says, "But Mary treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart." She held the message from God in quiet thought, letting it deepen her dependence on God alone. The greatness of her calling was too holy for immediate public sharing. It needed to be rooted in a quiet, special relationship with her Creator, away from the noise of immediate human interpretation or expectation. You see this clearly today when you think of a parent of a child who has gone astray, or a spouse whose partner has emotionally pulled away, leaving them feeling completely alone in a hard time. They have tried everything, used up all human ways, and now face a deep silence from the very people they want to connect with. In their despair, they are driven to pray, day after day, week after week. It is in this lonely, desperate place that they find God's presence to be their only comfort, their only hope. Their faith changes from a theory to a living, breathing, moment-by-moment dependence, showing God as their ever-present help in times of trouble. A final truth is that the silent treatment is a cutting back for future growth. God allows the cutting back of your connections and outward activities through quiet times, not to make you less, but to get you ready for a time of much greater success and influence. Jesus said, "He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, He prunes so that it will be even more fruitful." John chapter 15, verse 2. And we read in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 7, "A time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent, and a time to speak." Just as a gardener cuts back a healthy branch to make sure of a more abundant harvest, God sometimes allows a time that feels like severe cutting back. This can show up as the silent treatment from those you expected to support you, a sudden stop in chances, or a pulling back of resources. It feels like loss, like being cut off. But God's plan is not to subtract, it is to multiply. He is removing anything that stops your deepest growth and future success, not just dead wood, but even good things that are not best for the next time. This quiet time is where your spiritual energy is sent in a new direction, not spread out, but focused inside, preparing you for a great outpouring of impact that would have been impossible with the old ways and dependencies. The fruit that comes after such a time is often richer, stronger, and much more plentiful. One story that captures this is Jesus in the wilderness. Immediately after his baptism and the Father's affirmation, Jesus was led into the wilderness for 40 days, a time of deep physical and spiritual aloneness, temptation, and silence from human company. This was not a punishment, but a crucial cutting back and preparation. It was there that he made his resolve strong, overcame temptation, and came out ready for a ministry that would change humanity. The silent preparation was essential for the ultimate growth of disciples and the start of the kingdom. Another example is Moses in Midian. After his fierce attempt to free his people resulted in murder and running away, Moses spent 40 years in the empty silence of Midian, caring for sheep. He went from being a prince in Pharaoh's court, a man of power and influence, to a solitary shepherd. This long, silent time was God's cutting back. It took away his reliance on himself, his quick temper, his Egyptian identity, and built patience, humility, and a deep reliance on God. It was in that silent, forgotten place that God called him from the burning bush, preparing him to lead millions. The 40 years of silence were not wasted, but were the exact cutting back needed for his huge future. You see this clearly today when you imagine a gifted worship leader who, after years of leading successful teams and events, experiences a sudden, unexplainable quiet. Invitations stop, chances disappear, and even their own church quietly moves in a different direction. It feels like a terrible rejection, a silent dismissal. In this forced break, this leader is at first confused, then heartbroken, but eventually drawn into a time of deep personal worship, writing songs from a place of raw closeness and studying God's Word that they never had time for before. What felt like a career-ending silence was actually a divine cutting back, preparing them to come out with a renewed blessing, a fresh sound, and a deeper prophetic edge that impacts a far wider audience than their previous busy time ever could. If this truth is making your spirit stronger and bringing clarity to your struggle, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to The Fourth Steward for more strategic insights, and share a short story in the comments. What quiet truth is God showing you right now? The silent treatment of this world is not a curse, but God's planned help. It is the place where your true calling is made strong, purified from human praise. It is the clear path through which God's unmistakable voice now speaks to you, louder than any noise. It is the wilderness where your dependence shifts entirely to the eternal, making your roots deeper into a strong foundation. And it is the time of powerful cutting back, designed not to make you less, but to multiply your success beyond anything you could imagine. You have walked through the valley of the shadow of silent judgment, feeling the sting of rejection, the ache of being left alone. You felt invisible, unheard, perhaps even forgotten. But hear this now. God was never silent. He was waiting for the noise to fade so you could truly listen. He was waiting for you to look up, to recognize that the very stillness around you was His invitation into a holy place, a place of deep closeness and planned revelation. No longer will you see the silence of others as your ruin. You will recognize it as God's steady hand, guiding you, protecting you, and preparing you. The quiet hours you went through were not empty spaces. They were filled with the holy plans of your destiny. The aloneness was not a prison. It was a classroom where the master teacher showed deeper truths than any human mentor ever could. You are coming out of this time not weak or broken, but made strong, held firm in truth, and filled with a dependence on God that makes you strong. Your voice, when it rises again, will carry the weight of God's message, the deep kindness of strong feeling, and the power of one who has heard God's whisper in the quietest hours. You will lead not from a need for approval, but from an overflow of connection with God. You will comfort not from mere pity, but from deep, understanding insight, made strong in your own quiet struggles. The empty feeling you had was rich ground for a harvest of character, wisdom, and purpose that is now ready to spring forth. Now, let the truth fill your spirit. Repeat these declarations with me, not just with your lips, but with the strong belief of a soul that has changed. I declare that God's whisper is louder than any human silence. I declare that my aloneness is a holy place, not a prison, and God is my steady anchor. I declare that this season of silence is preparing me for a greater purpose, a deeper voice, and a strong blessing from God.